Welcome to the fourth and final session of the K-5 Conductor Mini-Course. Today we're going to be talking about facilitating group contributions. Here's the three topics that we're going to be covering. The first one is a volleyball analogy. This will really help us understand what it means to be a conductor and the role that we have in doing our part in the gathering to facilitate when people are contributing and when it's our turn to be kind of holding the ball, if you will. We'll get into more detail with that. Next, we're going to be talking about assisting without taking over. Specifically, since we are working with children, there's going to be times where, as a conductor, we're going to need to assist them in their role. For the most part, we're pushing as much as we can towards them taking full responsibility of their role and executing it on their own. But from time to time, we're going to need to step in, and so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And then finally, we're going to leave with Spirit-led pivots. And this is going to be times where the Holy Spirit does something within the gathering that doesn't go according to our plan, which is actually awesome. And we want to make sure that we're following the Spirit and not our plan. So let's start out with this volleyball analogy. I want you to think about yourself as a volleyball player in these group gatherings and as the rest of the participants as the other team, if you will. Now, we're obviously all on the same team here, but for the volleyball analogy, you're going to have to work with me. When it is our turn to be facilitating, to have the mic, if you will, to be the ones kind of leading and guiding, we have the volleyball in our court, all right? Now, when it is our turn to turn that over to somebody else, another participant in the gathering, to do their role, we need to make a clear distinction. We need to take the ball from where we have it and throw it over the net of sorts back to them, all right? And then when it's in their side of the court, we no longer have an opportunity to really keep, bouncing the ball or doing whatever we want with it. We don't have the opportunity of dictating at that point exactly how they're supposed to do their role. We, in a sense, are no longer leading in a direct way, but now in an indirect way. We're leading by actually allowing somebody else, another group participant, to really be able to take responsibility of their role and do it. What we don't want to do is once we turn it over to somebody for, let's say, a craft project, we don't want to then the whole time be kind of like helping them explain and trying to jump in and say, oh, you forgot that, and you were supposed to say this, and all of these things. We want them to feel like they actually have ownership and responsibility of this thing. And so there also will then be the time where they're finished, and guess what? They throw the ball back to us, and we are now back in that kind of direct leadership role where we are ready to facilitate the next contribution. So if you think about it sort of like a volleyball game, that might be helpful as an analogy for how we're supposed to be conducting a gathering. All right, our second part here, we are talking about assisting without taking over. And you can see there's three things here that we're going to be looking at specifically. The first one is we actually want to embrace imperfection, which I know sounds weird, but it's true. The fact is that the children who are doing their roles, once we hit the ball over to them on their side of the court and it's their turn to lead and take responsibility of their role, they're not going to do it perfectly. They're going to make mistakes. It's not going to always be clean and smooth. And guess what? That's okay. This is how they're going to learn. This is how they're going to grow. If we are stepping in every time they're making a mistake, or if every time they're not doing it exactly how it's quote unquote supposed to be done, we're actually going to be limiting their growth. So we want them to make mistakes, try hard, and we're going to celebrate with them in their process. Second thing you'll see here is help by asking questions. This one's actually a really cool technique for assisting somebody without everyone really knowing that that's taking place. So you might have seen me do this in a couple of situations. If somebody is like giving directions for a game, let's say, but they haven't been fully clear on how the game is really supposed to be played, rather than jump in and be like, oh, this is also the different parts of the game, and you start beginning to like explain to the rest of the kids how the game goes. Instead, what I'll do is I'll act like a normal participant as a conductor. I'll raise my hand and I'll ask a question that actually will lead them to give the answer, to give clarity for the rest of the people in the group. Doing this is a great way if somebody's just forgetting a piece of information here or there, or if the kids seem confused, it's a great way of helping to prompt the person who is taking responsibility for their role to share that piece of information without actually directly stepping in and taking over the situation. But then there is times rarely, hopefully, where we do need to step in. These would be situations where the kid is just really, really struggling, where you can see their self-confidence just plummeting, they're kind of crashing in a way, and they just need some real help. If that's the case, please step in and help them out in that situation. There also might be times where the kids are asking the group to do something that isn't quite abiding by the values and principles that we hold. I would think that that would be few and far in between. But if that was the case, there's another time where we need to kind of step in and be like, oh, hey, maybe instead of doing this, let's try this other way of doing it, just so that we're embracing really the whole spirit and values of our time together. All right, and now finally, we're going to talk about spirit-led pivots. Proverbs 19, verse 21 says, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. So, you remember at the start of our gathering, I believe it was session 2, we talked about the gathering contribution list that we had and writing out the person's role, their name, their time frame, that type of thing, just to give ourselves a rough understanding of how the gathering is going to go. I want you to think about that as a starting place for the gathering. What may end up happening is that the Lord may end up prompting something different to happen during our time together that goes kind of off the board. It doesn't follow the contribution list exactly. And that's good. We want to follow the Holy Spirit in that way. And it could happen in a couple of ways. One, we could feel a personal prompting. So as the conductor, we may internally feel like, hey, I'm really sensing the Spirit saying that we're not supposed to do the game next, but instead we're supposed to actually head into the equipping lesson or any sort of thing like that. It could be a personal thing. Or we also want to be understanding that the rest of the group, the other participants, the children in the gathering, they might feel a leading and prompting from the Holy Spirit. And they might say, hey, Mr. Tyler, or whoever it is that's conducting, I'm sensing that the Lord might want to do this. And then it's our job at that time to take a moment and to see if, yeah, the Lord's on that or the Lord's not on that. And then we have the responsibility as to whether or not we pivot from the direction that we were going or we continue on the path that we were already going on. So that's a little bit of a short kind of talk about just kind of following the Spirit during a gathering. I know we haven't done a bunch of that yet, but I do foresee in the future, as we continue to grow and mature in our roles, that this might be more of a present thing where we're going to want to be focused and in tune on what the Spirit's doing rather than just following our list of roles. All right, that's it. You guys did it. We made it to the end of our K-5 Conductor Mini-Course. These lessons are going to stay up so that you can look at them anytime. I would suggest that you review them if you're getting fuzzy on anything, or go ahead and just rewatch the whole thing again. They're short, they're quick. You should be able to do it in a matter of time. And so that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and I'm excited for the next leg of the adventure.